Welcome to Football's Golden Oldies from the Toll House Inn, Lancaster. This talk will be different as I won't be using league games because I don't know much about the Brazilian league and who Santos would have played in a season, but I hope you enjoy my research about this great man. Pele played his football like Tom Finney and Stan Matthews, treating his opponents with respect, which is not done in the rest of South America or anywhere else in the world, including Britain. The man, the legend, dedicated to Tariq, who first suggested him. Even people who don't know anything about football know Edson Arantes do Nascimento, or Pele. The best of a generation of Brazilians, universally acknowledged as the most brilliant group of footballers ever to play the game. He won the World Cup 3 times and is Brazil's all-time record goal scorer. But how did this man, a sportsman, a mere footballer, like countless others, become a global superstar? I will cover some aspects of his glorious playing days and his subsequent careers as a politician, international sporting ambassador and cultural icon. The photo shows his parents, Celeste and Dondino. Edson Arantes do Nascimento. How good was he though? This man, Cesar Luis Menotti, regards Brazil as his country's great football enemy. He is Argentinian to the marrow, a fanatical patriot and the coach who led the most flamboyant Argentina team ever to win the World Cup in 1978. We have all seen and heard our fill of football experts. There is no more astute, cerebral or refined critic of the football art than Menotti, who is a great admirer of Lionel Messi. I watched a film of him speaking to the camera and saying, "When you talk about football, don't bring Pele into it because he is from another planet." Messi is a rabbit. Pele was a panther. Messi scuttles, stops, hops this way, hops that way, then runs through a gap to score, and he is a violin virtuoso with his left foot, but suspect on his right. Pele was bigger, more powerful, but fluid and feline at the same time, setting off on a run like a human cascade, pouring on, not breaking stride as he swerved past one defender after another and hit shots into the roof of the net from outside the area with equal force from either foot, pinging lobs over the goalkeeper with the delicacy of an Arnold Palmer sandwich, and the spring in his heels plus the power of his neck gifted him the talent to head the ball better than Cristiano Ronaldo. Pele was Messi and Ronaldo rolled into one, plus a dash of the magic of Ronaldinho. Pele's skill was singular, but his human warmth was universal. He had supreme athleticism and raw power, but he also had the impish love of the game, fun and imagination that marks out the game of football in the country where he was born. Please do yourself a favour and see a video of a scene that I have seen but lack the words to describe. Go to your internet search engine and put in the words Ladislav Mazurkovic, Pele 1970. Mazurkovic is the unlikely name of the Uruguayan fall guy in a lightning passage of play starring Pele during the 1970 World Cup. It's not a goal, in fact it's the greatest goal never scored, and I have seen anything on a football pitch that comes close to it in invention or litheness of movement. As Pele joins the immortals, I doubt very much that anyone will ever see his like fans feel as though football was invented for this magical player. That was Bobby Charlton. When I saw Pele play, it made me feel I should hang up my boots. That was Just Fontaine, who scored 13 goals for France in the 1958 World Cup. I told myself before the game, he's made of skin and bones, just like everyone else, but I was wrong. That was Tarcisio Bergnic, the Italian who marked Pele in the 1970 World Cup final. He's the greatest player of all time, and by some distance, I might add. Zico, former Brazilian player. The greatest player in history is Alfredo Di Stefano. I refuse to classify Pele as a player, he was above that. That was Ferenc Puskás, the Hungarian legend. Pele is the only player who surpassed the boundaries of logic, Johan Cruyff, the Dutch legend. The best player ever, Pele. Lionel Messi and Cristiano Ronaldo are both great with specific qualities, but Pele was better. Alfredo Di Stefano, winner of 5 European Cups with Real Madrid. I arrived hoping to stop a great man, but I went away convinced I had been undone by someone who was not born on the same planet as the rest of us. Costa Pereira on Benfica's loss to Pele's Santos in 1962. We went up together to head a ball. I was taller, but when I came back down, I looked up in astonishment as Pele was still there, in the air, heading that ball. It was like he could stay suspended for as long as he wanted to. Giacinto Facchetti, the Italian captain in the 1970 World Cup final. He was my idol and I was an Argentinian, Ozzy Ardiles. We have one Beethoven, one Bach, one Michelangelo, one Pele. Pele was born Edson Arantes do Nascimento on October 23, 1940, in Three Hearts, Brazil, the son of Fluminense footballer Dondinho and Celeste Arantes. He was named after the American inventor Thomas Edison, and his parents decided to remove the I and call him Edson. But there was a mistake on the birth certificate, leading many documents to show his name as Edison, not Edson, as it was called. He received the nickname Pele during his school days, when, it is claimed, he was given it because of his pronunciation of the name of his favourite player, local Vasco da Gama goalkeeper Pele, which he could not pronounce. Pele grew up in poverty in Bauru, in the state of Sao Paulo, earning extra money by working in tea shops as a servant, taught to play by his father Dondinho, who scored many goals. He could not afford a proper football and usually played with either a sock stuffed with newspaper and tied with string, or a grapefruit. According to Pele, futsal or indoor football presented difficult challenges. Pele credits futsal for helping him think better on the spot. In addition, futsal allowed him to play with adults when he was about 14 years old, and in one of the tournaments he participated in, he was initially considered too young to play, but eventually went on to end up top scorer with 14 or 15 goals. Pele said, "That gave me a lot of confidence, and I knew then not to be afraid of whatever might come." Pele makes a promise to his dad in 1950. In 1956, Valdemar de Brito took Pele to Santos, an industrial port city located near Sao Paulo, to try out for professional club Santos, telling the directors at Santos that the 15-year-old would be the greatest football player in the world. Pele impressed the Santos coach Lula during his trial, and he signed a professional contract with the club in June 1956. His senior team debut came on September 7, 1956, 1956 at the age of 15 against Corinthians de Santo Andre and had an impressive performance in a 7-1 victory, scoring the first goal in his prolific career during the match. In 1950, Brazil hosted the World Cup. Pele was 9 years old and he remembers a table full of cakes, sweets, sandwiches and beer, a party to celebrate Brazil's victory as they had trounced Sweden 7-1 and Spain 6-1 and only needed a draw to finish top of the league to claim the Jules Rimet trophy. Brazil scored first, but soon after Uruguay equalised, but the house was still confident, and then in the 80th minute Uruguay scored the winning goal and Pele's father cried at the final whistle. So Pele said, "Don't cry, father, one day I will win the World Cup for you to try and make his beloved father feel better." A few days later, Dondinho had recovered, but some people watching the game at the Maracana Stadium had actually died from the shock. The start of it all. Top right is the ball made out of socks that started Pele's career. Far right is a family meal with mother Dona Celeste, father Dondinho and sister Maria Lucia. Near right, first team, Burkino, 1950, Pele sat on the floor, and the tall man far right is Walter de Brito. Selected to play for Brazil in the 1958 World Cup, Pele had learned the ropes at Santos, where he can be seen tussling with Mario Zagallo at Botafogo, who he would play alongside at the 58 and 62 World Cups before playing under him as manager in 1970. Far right photograph shows Mario Americo works his magic on Pele with hot towels as he tries to get his injury cleared up to play against Wales. First game in the 58 World Cup. Pele's first goal in World Cup football came on June 19, 1958 against Wales in Gothenburg to win the match 1-0. He missed a couple of matches through injury, but after treatment he faced Wales, who had obviously never heard about him, so were completely unprepared for this youngster who turned out to be a phenomenon. Jean-Charles sadly missed this game because he was badly injured in a previous game. The final for Dondinho. There were 50,000 people inside the stadium at kick-off, and as the anthems played, Pele had a sudden vision of Dondinho, his father, at home. His father hunched over the radio, nervous but proud. Sweden scored after 4 minutes, but some magic from Garrincha set up Vava to equalise. Before Pele found Garrincha again, he passed to Vava to make it 2-1. After 56 minutes, Pele scored from a deep pass from Nilton Santos, and 10 minutes later, Zagallo made it 4-1, and the trophy was almost won. But Simonsen scored for Sweden after 79 minutes. Brazil just kept possession from then on, with the fans chanting "Samba, Samba." The final play was seen in the photo. Pele outjumped 2 Swedish defenders to touch the ball with his head and watch it loop into the corner of the net for Brazil's 5th goal and Pele's 2nd. Brazilian government take action. Pele was declared a national treasure by the Brazilian government after his performances in the country's first ever World Cup win, where Pele scored 6 goals at the age of 17. Pele received numerous offers from European football clubs, Manchester United, Arsenal, Tottenham, Milan, Juventus and Inter Milan, but the decree was instituted to prevent him from being transferred to a foreign club. Considered the greatest footballer ever, Pele can be seen crying with relief and joy on goalkeeper Gilmar's shoulders at the final whistle after beating Sweden 5-2 to lift the Jules Rimet trophy. '62 World Cup in Chile. Pele feels the challenge of Czechoslovakia's Ladislav Novak during the second match, which meant he watched the rest of Brazil's campaign from the touchline, and you can see where his left foot is directed, straight onto Pele's left ankle. Pele's doctor refused to give him an injection, so he laid down for 5 days and watched the 2-1 win over Spain on television. Brazil beat England in the quarter-final 3-1. Garrincha was outstanding, even though in Moore, Greaves and Charlton, England had the makings of a team that would win in 1966. Semi-final against Chile. Again it was Garrincha's game. He was in a different league. His dribbling was amazing. Scored 2 goals and then got sent off after being brutally kicked, then retaliated. Final against Czechoslovakia, and Pele had a fitness test. Went to take a corner and felt a lightning flash of pain through his groin. He could hardly walk. His dreams were shattered. Brazil won 3-1, and Pele was delighted to join in the team celebrations. He was inconsolable at missing the final and wanted to return home. But the team doctor said, "If we keep talking about the possibility of you playing, they will be worried and they'll have to change their strategies at the 11th hour when they see our lineup." Can we pause Pele and look at his friend? The world might be divided between Pele, Maradona, Messi and the rest, but there once walked a humble genius, shoulder to shoulder with Pele, who is still the greatest dribbler the world has ever seen. With his curved legs, the left one bent inwards and the right 2.5 inches shorter and curved outwards, gentle genius Garrincha scripted some of football's most beautiful performances ever. Manuel Francisco dos Santos, known as Mane, was born in Pau Grande, a small city near Rio de Janeiro, on October 28, 1933, and died of alcoholic abuse on January 20th, 1983, in Rio de Janeiro at the age of 49. Garrincha means songbird, was a carefree soul who, apart from his passion for football, shared his interest in alcohol and women, as well earning the nicknames Joy of the People and Angel with Bent Legs. His ability to change direction off the step at such acute angles was astonishing. Watch his videos. He invariably went right, even if he went left initially, coming back to go right, and although defenders thought they had figured it out, Garrincha had the ability to evade their lunges by the angle of his step. This obviously takes the highest level of dexterity of foot, and even today he has no equals. Not even Ronaldo, Maradona or Messi can match his genius. During one game, he bamboozled his marker so much, the defender fell on the floor as Garrincha ran past him. But instead of carrying on, Garrincha dribbled back to his opponent, picked him up off the turf before carrying on down the wing. Zagallo said he had the mentality of a child, not an adult, always joking around, not taking anything seriously. You see, to Garrincha it was fun, to be enjoyed by everyone. We will not see his like again. Pele's friendship with Little Bird. Pele with Garrincha, the Little Bird, in his Botafogo kit in August 1963. Although rivals at club level, Brazil never lost a game when they played together in the national side. I'm not sure how many of us realise how great a player Garrincha was. He played 50 international matches for Brazil and lost 1 with deformed legs. When he went for a trial to Botafogo, he was up against Nilton Santos, the great Brazilian fullback, and after the game, Santos took Garrincha to the president of the club and said, "Sign this young boy so I will not have to face him ever again." His life was tragic though, as he only played for fun, often not knowing who their opponents were 10 minutes before kick-off. Following in his father's footsteps, to become an alcoholic before dying at the age of 49. A tragedy. On 29th of May, 10 days before the 58 World Cup final started, Garrincha scored one of his most famous goals against Fiorentina in Italy, where he beat 4 defenders and the goalkeeper before stopping on the goal line, and that reminded me of the great Len Shackleton. Rather than shooting, he then dribbled past the returning goalkeeper Enzo Robotti to score. Despite his stunning performances, his coaches were upset at what they considered an irresponsible move, and this likely led to Garrincha not being picked for Brazil's first 2 matches of the 58 tournament. However, he did start their 3rd match against the USSR, and with Didi, Vava and Pele, he led Brazil to a memorable victory. This match marked the debut of both Garrincha and Pele, a golden partnership. Last slide on the little bird. Garrincha eventually, in partnership with Pele, led Brazil to lift the 58 World Cup, their first, but the real worth of money was revealed in the 62 World Cup, when Pele was put out of the tournament in the 2nd game with an injury. He spearheaded Brazil with sheer brilliance, his genius producing some memorable victories, notably over England in the quarter-final, on the path to Brazil's 2nd World Cup, with Garrincha winning the player of the tournament. His carefree spirit and overindulgence in alcohol and women led to his downfall, and in the 66 World Cup he was far below his best and a pale shadow of his former self, struggling with a year-long knee injury which devoided him of his electrifying bursts of speed which used to terrorise opponents. Amarildo said of him, "Mané doesn't belong to any club, he belongs to all the clubs in Brazil. Everybody supported Garrincha. It was the joy of the people." He made his last appearance for Brazil when he ended up on the losing side against Hungary in the 1966 World Cup at Goodison Park. But Brazil, with Garrincha, won 52 games, drew 7, lost 1, but never lost when he and Pele played together. For Botafogo, Garrincha played 581 games, scoring 232 goals, playing his first match on July 19, 1953, scoring 3 goals in their victory of 6-3 over Botafogo. He was champion of the Carioca League in 1957, 61 and 62, and of the Rio Sao Paulo League in 1962 and 64, as there was no Brazilian championship at that time. And his greatest accolade came in June 1998 when he was named in the World Team of the 20th Century by 250 journalists from across the world. It is a sad reality that while the world today swoons over Ronaldo, Messi and the rest, no one seems to remember this timeless genius and one of the true exponents of the beautiful game, the angel with bent legs. And it was Pele who said, in his position, Garrincha was the greatest player in the world. Title that hid the hurt of Chile. Santos captain Zito can be seen with the Intercontinental Club Cup that they won, beating Benfica 5-2 in Lisbon on October 11, 1962. Pele can be seen just behind Zito, exhausted but jubilant after scoring a hat-trick. Far right photograph shows Pele. He loved playing goalie, for years was reserve keeper at Santos. Experience best forgotten. The 1966 World Cup was an experience best forgotten, unless you were English. Overconfidence and poor preparation meant that Brazil struggled to qualify for the second round and had to beat Eusebio's Portugal when they played them at Goodison Park on July 19, 1966. Brazil were outplayed, losing 3-1, and Pele was the targeted man again, trudging off after being hacked and kicked all afternoon, ending their World Cup. After this game, Pele said he would not play in the World Cup again. He was retiring from international football. A very unusual and rare story. In 1968, Santos were playing many games abroad and were successful. One of Pele's favourite stories happened on the way back from Africa via the USA to South America, when they landed in Bogota to play the Colombian Olympic team, and he thinks that this event never happened before or since. During the game, the referee, Guillermo Chato Velasquez, let a goal stand that blatantly should have been disallowed, so a teammate, Lima, went to protest and he was promptly sent off, which infuriated Pele. He was fuming and confronted Chato, who immediately sent him off. The stadium went crazy. Fans started to throw cushions. There was chaos around the dugouts. Then dozens of officials came onto the pitch, followed by police with batons to protect Chato, but the stadium was baying for his blood. The chant started, "Pele, Pele." They had paid to see Pele and weren't going to let a referee spoil their day, so the unprecedented decision was made to send the referee off, and Pele was unsent off. Before Santos could leave the stadium, the police came into the dressing room and arrested about 6 players, as Chato had made a complaint. Santos talked to him and came to an agreement. That smells like they paid cash. 2 days later, Santos were flown home by the now defunct Peruvian airline APSA. The road to the Magic Thousand. In the late summer and autumn of 1969, all the attention started to focus on Pele reaching 1,000 goals, a feat which had never been achieved before, and by October he had scored 989. In the small state of Paraíba, there were thousands and thousands of people at the airport to greet Santos. Pele needed 2 goals, so when they were leading 2-0, the referee awarded a penalty, and Carlos Alberto, the penalty taker, refused to take it, so Pele put the ball on the spot. Whack, 1 to go. Then the goalkeeper of Santos, Jair Estevayo, collapsed and was taken off ill, so Pele, the reserve keeper, had to do his duty and go in goal. Even though he was not tall, he was always a good goalkeeper because of his propulsion. For Santos and Brazil, he was always a reserve keeper, playing 4 times in goal for Santos and only once in a friendly for Brazil, but he would often trade with the goalkeepers for both teams. One more game in the tour of the Brazilian Northeast against Bahia in Salvador, and the atmosphere was like a carnival. The stadium was packed. Flags, banners, drummers, and a contagious excitement. Pele hit the post early, then in the second half ran to the right of the goal and shot past the keeper, and from nowhere a defender lunged to clear the ball off the line, but instead of cheering, the fans began booing their own players. Never happened before or since in the annals of football history. Back to the Maracana. The following game was 3 days later against Vasco, and the stakes were raised once more. The biggest stadium in the world was full to bursting point, and the date was November 19th, which is Brazil's National Flag Day, and the the Vasco players were intent on frustrating Pele. Vasco's keeper, Andrade, an Argentinian, was in formidable form, but then a cross came and Pele rose to head it into the net. But before it crossed the line, René, a Vasco player, got there first and headed into his own net. Even that seemed preferable to letting Pele achieve his target. Something had to give, and it did. As Pele raced into the penalty area, he was tripped and the referee awarded a penalty, despite Vasco's protest. For the first time in his career, Pele felt nervous. He was shaking, but he remembered a training session with the national side and saw Didi invent a new trick by running up to the ball, stopping to see which way the keeper was moving, and shoot to the opposite side. It became known as the paradinha, the little stop, but goalkeepers began to complain, and in the 1970s, FIFA banned the paradinha. Back to the game. Pele ran to the spot, made a paradinha, and struck the ball. Goal! The 1000th goal from a penalty, and Pele claims the ball. The much anticipated 1000 goal was celebrated at the Santos versus Vasco da Gama game at the Maracana on November 19th, 1969, when Pele beat the Vasco goalkeeper Andrade and the burden was lifted from his shoulders. Could Pele get his wish and go out on top? After the disappointment of 1966, Pele had retired from the national team. However, when thoughts turned to the 1970 World Cup in Mexico, he had a change of heart, and after a 2-year gap, he decided to play for his country again, and hopefully not go out as a loser, but go out on top. Another factor was the venue itself. Pele had a lot of respect for Mexican football crowds, who had always treated him and Santos well, as neither the altitude nor the heat was a problem to him. In early 1969, though, João Saldana replaced Moreira as coach, and he brought a new directness to the job, saying to the players, "Santos and Botafogo are the best teams in Brazil, so the base of the team will be their players. You can say what you like, but I'm not changing my mind." Saldana's plain-speaking, hard-man approach, however, started to be a problem, as he couldn't take criticism. He liked to drink and began to behave erratically during call-ups, saying Gerson had mental problems and Pele would be out of the side because he was short-sighted. Pele immediately responded to being called myopic by saying he would have scored 2,000 goals if he wasn't short-sighted. One fight Saldana had and was bound to lose was with João Avalanche, who gave the coach's job to Mario Zagallo, Pele's old teammate from the 58 and 62 World Cups, who said, "What this team needs are great players, players who are intelligent. Let's go with that and see where it takes us. So Tostão and Cruzeiro will be in the squad." First game, June 3rd, 1970. Czechoslovakia were the opponents in the baking heat of Jalisco Stadium in front of 53,000 people. And the first lineup was Felix in goal, back four Carlos Alberto, Brito, Piazza, Everaldo, midfield Clodoaldo, Gerson, forwards Jairzinho, Tostão, Rivellino and Pele. The Czechs took the lead, but then Pele was fouled on the edge of the box and Rivellino equalised. Soon after a little bit of audacity from Pele, he was spotted the keeper off his line and he hit a 65-yard shot from his own half, which just went a foot past the post. In the second half, Pele scored a sweet volley and Rivellino added a 2 to make the final score 4-1. Brazil's next opponent would be England, whose preparation for Mexico had not been without difficulties. Not not least because of a series of faux pas by manager Sir Alf Ramsey, who had not endeared himself to the Mexican public by making a number of ill-advised comments. 4 days after the Czech encounter, they clashed in the Jalisco Stadium in front of 66,000 spectators, and it was another scorching day with a noon start because of television scheduling. But Brazil knew the English would feel the heat and humidity more than they would. The difficulty in breaching the English defence was made very clear after 10 minutes play by another famous 1970 moment, the save by Gordon Banks from Pele's leaping header after Jairzinho swept by Cooper to deliver a perfect cross into the box. Jumping powerfully, Pele met the ball cleanly and headed it down just inside the post. It felt like a textbook header, and Pele knew it was a goal as he watched the ball spin towards the net. But then, from nowhere, from the other post in fact, which amounted to much the same thing, Gordon Banks flung himself towards the ball, managing in an effort of extraordinary agility to scoop it up, out and over the bar. It was a phenomenal save, maybe the save of all tournaments, and not long after he made another great save, this time from a free kick, a tremendous performance, and Gordon kept England in the game with a chance. Brazil's patience was eventually rewarded with a lovely team goal when Tostão beat 3 England players, including nutmegging Bobby Moore before slipping the ball to Pele. Pele, rather than shooting as expected, controlled the ball before passing it carefully to Jairzinho, who scored with practically the only shot on goal in the game, and Brazil were 1-0 up, and that's the way it stayed. Jeff Astle had a gilt-edged chance late in the game, but put his weak effort wide of the post. The save. Pele said Gordon Banks was a goalkeeper with magic. I'm glad he made the save. That act was the start of a friendship between us that I will always treasure. Whenever we met, it was always like we had never been apart. If Pele had scored that goal, it would have simply added another goal to the 1283 that he had scored, but now it will live forever in football history. When Banks died, Pele said, "Rest in peace, my friend. Yes, you were a goalkeeper with magic, but you were so much more. You were a fine human being." Gordon Banks appeared like a kind of blue phantom. Onwards towards the Jules Rimet Trophy. The third group game was against Romania, and it proved to be Brazil's worst performance, as Pele scored twice, with Jairzinho adding a third, but the Romanians didn't lie down. In fact, they scored twice. Pele said it was a bad game. We suffered from overconfidence and were very nearly punished by a courageous and committed Romanian side, but at least we made it through to the knockout stages, played 3, won 3. In the quarter-finals, they would play Peru, coached by an old friend and former teammate, Didi. Peru were good, but Brazil were better, running out 4-2 winners. And it was easily the most enjoyable match they had played so far, with the Didi connection and the fact that Pele knew a lot of the Peruvian players personally, having toured there with Santos many times, and the game was attack, attack, attack. Tostão and Rivellino in particular were absolutely magnificent, scoring 3 between them, with Jairzinho adding the 4th. They listened to the Russia versus Hungary game on the radio, and after extra time, Uruguay won 1-0. In another place, another time, Tostão, one of the greatest players even Brazil has produced, a member of the elite, with an elite who shaped the world whose interest widened after he stopped kicking a ball. Uruguay in the semi-finals. Somebody said, his voice thick with emotion, they have been stuck in our throats for 20 years, since 1950. We've got to get them out, we've got to win. The 1950 result meant nothing to some of the Brazilian players, but many of them remembered the agonies of 1950, and when game day arrived it wasn't easy to calm people down. There were a lot of nerves. When the game started, Brazil started making the same mistakes, bad passes, weak defence. After 20 minutes they were 1-0 down, with the Uruguayans playing hard, sometimes brutally, with one attacker and 10 players in defence. Clodoaldo, over his nerves, finally scored just before half-time from a great tossed-out pass, and when they came out for the second half, it was a different Brazil on show. They took control, playing quick, smart football, with Jairzinho and Rivellino scoring, but they missed lots of other chances. I remember slide 3, where Pele dummied the goalkeeper. Well, this was the game he did it in. Pele said, we were a better team than the Uruguayans, just as we had been in 1950. The difference now was that 20 years on, it was the better team that won. World Cup final, Catenaccio or Dolball versus the beautiful team. Italy had beaten West Germany 4-3 after extra time to reach the final after a terrible foul on Beckenbauer shifted the balance of power. Over 100,000 were inside the Azteca Stadium on a sweltering June day to see Brazil line up. Felix, back four, Carlos Alberto, Brito, Piazzo, Everaldo, midfield, Clodoaldo, Gerson, forwards, Jairzinho, Tostao, Pele, Rivellino. Italy sat back and tried to soak up pressure rather than change their game plan. Too many Brazilians were on form, Pele included, who played one of his best games ever in a Brazil shirt. After only 18 minutes, Rivellino crossed into the box where Pele timed his jump to perfection to head the ball past the outstretched hands of goalkeeper Enrico Albertozzi. Pele celebrates with Jairzinho, see the photograph, and Brazil continued to create problems. But after 37 minutes, Clodoaldo foolishly backheeled the ball into an empty space for Bonansenia to advance and beat Felix. Is this the best ending ever? Italy failed to press home any psychological advantage, so Brazil took control and Gerson scored with a long shot after 66 minutes. Jairzinho scored 5 minutes later, becoming the first player to score in every round of the World Cup. 4 minutes from time, Italy were man marking, so Facchetti was following Jairzinho, who left the right wing, creating a space that Brazil called the Avenue. Near the end, Tostao got the ball, passed to Jairzinho, who passed it to Pele, who paused before passing the ball into the Avenue, knowing that Carlos Alberto would be arriving on his own. It worked perfectly. Carlos Alberto drove a thunderbolt past Albertozzi to win the World Cup 4-1. An elated Pele can be seen celebrating the victory, hugging Ado, the reserve goalkeeper, as they became world champions for the third time. Collecting the Jules Rimet trophy. They went back on the pitch to collect the Jules Rimet trophy from the President of Mexico, and as this was the third time they had won it, it had been decided it would be theirs to keep. Carlos Alberto, who had been Pele's teammate at Santos for 5 years, lifted the trophy above his head with tears of joy in his eyes, and Pele said, "It was like nothing I had ever known. except perhaps watching Bellini do the same thing in 1958, but this time I had a proper understanding of what it meant to all the people back home. Pele had played in every game, and Brazil had won every game, including the 6 qualifiers, 12 in total. No other team has broken that record. The jubilant Carlos Alberto can be seen with the World Cup in 1970. Final games for Brazil and Santos. Pele's final game for Brazil was against Yugoslavia at the Maracana on July 18, 1971. The photo far right. His final game for Santos was against Ponte Preta at the Villa Belmiro on October 2nd, 1974. 20 minutes into the game, Pele caught the ball, jogged over to the centre circle, placed it on the ground, knelt before it, and it was at this moment that everyone realised that his career with his beloved Santos had ended. Buckingham Palace invitation. In December 1997, Pele, then Brazil's Minister of Sport, had the great honour of being made a Knight Commander of the British Empire, KBE, by the Queen during a ceremony at Buckingham Palace. The far photograph shows the birth of his twins, Joshua and Celeste, in 1996. Far East Business and Footballing, 2002. With Assyria on a business trip to China early in 2002, always smiling. Later that year, also in Asia, Pele watched Brazil lift the World Cup for a record 5th time after Ronaldo had scored both goals in a 2-0 victory over Germany. And you can see the far right photograph, Pele hugging Ronaldo. Olympic torch in 2004, yet another honour for the great man, carrying the Olympic torch during its first ever visit to South America, ahead of the Athens game in 2004. 2 icons, Nelson Mandela and Pele in Pretoria, South Africa in 2007. A move to America to earn dollars. Pele had appointed someone to run his business affairs, but it was disastrous as he lost most, if not all, of his cash. And then he made the decision to go to America to play for Cosmos, who were owned by Warner Communications, who got Henry Kissinger, the United States Secretary of State, to issue a formal invitation to Pele to play and help with developing football in the US. It was arranged that he would play for Cosmos for 2 years as an employee of Warner Communications, who guaranteed Pele 50% of any revenue the club made for using his name, and the contract gave him $9 million. His first game was on June 15, 1975, and his final game against Santos was on October 1st, 1977, where he played 1 half for Cosmos 1 half for Santos. Pele is a citizen of the world. Some of Brazil's best-known footballers have faced a furious backlash, and pundits question why they had failed to attend the funeral of Pele. Among them were Neymar and Vinicius Jr. Hundreds of thousands of people waited for hour after hour under a burning sun Monday, January the 2nd, 2023, to file past the recently deceased soccer legend's coffin at Villa Belmiro Stadium. Pele is a citizen of the world at the same level as Nelson Mandela or Mahatma Gandhi, but Brazilian footballers don't know how to recognise that. That was said by Neto, once a former Brazil midfielder, who was now a popular TV presenter. Former Santos president Marcelo Teixeira said Pele was a fantastic human being. He had a generous heart, not just because he was the athlete of the century. He always looked after people in a really sincere, humble way. Marcelo Buono, a Santos native who now lives in Miami, also returned to pay respect and said, "We grew up with him. He used to go to the supermarket here every day because that was normal for us. He was always fantastic, giving autographs for the kids. Pele was an amazing person, an inspiration." This memory takes me back to Old Trafford when Duncan Edwards, Eddie Coleman, Bobby Charlton and the rest would spend 90 minutes every day signing autographs outside the ground. Pele never lost that. The whole city is drawn to the stadium. It is baking hot, about 30 degrees in Santos, but it feels like the whole city is drawn to the heart of Villa Belmiro Stadium, where Pele's coffin lies. A steady stream of mourners, over 200,000, would pass through the centre to pay their final respects. Sometimes a smattering of applause breaks out as they pass his coffin. People from all over Brazil and the outside world have come. There is a Mexican flag and a Dutch flag. There are several news helicopters buzzing overhead. People are dressed in the striped black and white jerseys of Santos Football Club, Pele's team, or in Brazil's national team's yellow jersey. Pele's voice blasts out over the stands in the stadium. His 2006 song, Meu Legado, My Legacy, is playing on repeat. Outside the stadium, a queue of thousands snakes for kilometres across half a dozen city blocks. Photographs for a special man. You can see at the far left, Pele and Bobby Moore. Then he was commentating on the '78 World Cup with his great friend Gordon Banks, then with Muhammad Ali, giving a speech as the President of Sport in 1995, and then all three generations, son Edinho and father Dondinho. Talent beyond compare. If all the qualities that made football irresistible to countless millions have ever been embodied in one supreme player, that man is Pele. The history of the game brims with great performances and unforgettable talents, but none of the others, not even the imperial Alfredo Di Stefano or the deadly Ferenc Puskas, could pervade the field with quite the divine sense of superiority that radiated naturally from Pele at the height of his powers. His relationship with the ball was different from that achieved by anyone else. Other great footballers concentrate on mastering the ball, using it like a tool, but for him it often seemed to be a living ally, dancing between and around his sprinting feet as it chose to be there. He appeared able to run at maximum speed without concerning himself with an ordinary mortal's problems of control. The impression given by his explosive, dribbling surges was of the ball somehow galloping with him, matching every adjustment of his stride, while it mischievously frustrated the most determined attempts to dispossess him. His passing was varied, precise and imaginative, and his finishing with either foot or with headers his soaring leaps afforded him was violently decisive, bringing nearly 1,300 goals in his career. Even such a catalogue of his capacities cannot convey anything like the true impact of Pele in his prime. Permeating all those gifts and heightening their effect, there was magic of his spirit, the way he was able to blend ferocious competitiveness with real joy in the beauty of football. A tenuous link to Lancaster footballer who lives in Canada. Dave Hopkinson recalled a great story to me in early 2023. In 1959, I played alongside a young lad called Keith Eddy for North Lancashire schoolboys against Northumberland boys in a match at St Bees in Cumberland on a cliff-top pitch overlooking the Irish Sea in a howling wind. We were 3-0 behind at half-time, and Keith and myself scored 2 wind-assisted goals each in the second half to win 4-3. Keith Eddy went on to play 500 games for Watford and Sheffield United, finishing his playing career captaining New York Cosmos alongside Pele in the 1980s. Keith managed Toronto Blizzard in the North American Soccer League in that same decade, and I went down to the dressing room after one game to chat with him. I remember him telling me that, as captain of New York Cosmos, he'd relieved Pele of penalty duties in favour of himself. Only a Barrow in Furness boy would have the goal and the nerve to do that. Sadly, last month, January 2023, I read an obituary of Keith Eddy, the Barrow boy and the Brazilian great Pele, passing away weeks apart. The photograph shows Red Rose Boys Club of Lancaster, 1960-61, pitching on the Key Meadow, Lancaster, and the guy with the cap on is the Dave Hodkinson, who gave me this link. Pele's goal-scoring career. In his book, there is a match-by-match summary of his goal-scoring career as a professional footballer up to his retirement from Cosmos on October 1st, 1977. With details of 1,367 matches, the last one against Santos, ending 2-1, Pele scored. This magnificent football artist scored 1,283 goals, and the list includes a number of lost Pele matches that only recently came to light. After his retirement from Cosmos, Pele also played in 8 exhibition matches. 1978, Fluminense versus Nigeria, 3-1. 1978 again, Fluminense versus Raka Rovers, Nigeria, 2-1. 79, Flamengo versus Atletico Mineiro, 5-1. 24th of September 1980, Cosmos versus NASL All-Stars, 3-2, which was Franz Beckenbauer's farewell game. 1983, Sudeste 11 versus Sull 11, 1-1. 1984, Cosmos All-Stars versus Cosmos, 2-6. 1987, Brazil Seniors versus Italy Seniors, 3-0. 1990, Friends of Pele 11 versus Brazil, 2-1. This was a very special journey for me, thanks to my great friend Terry, who suggested I research Pele. Thank you, Terry.